Duluan ya, Bu.
Ya, kasih ya.
Iya, sama.
Oke. Good morning, Prof. Zhou.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, it's very clear. Yeah, thank you very much for.
Hi, how are you?
I'm fine, good, thank you.
Sure.
The time zone is very 14 hours right now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's almost 7 p.m. my time.
7 p.m.
Mm.
We just start the day and you will end your day. That's
That's
how
okay.
the
Uh-huh.
time zone is very far, quite. Thank you that you are willing to join with us for today. Okay. Maybe we will start 4 minutes more, nine sharp.
Yeah, that's okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Whenever you are ready, I'm ready.
Yeah, so it's about migration. Your concern about Asian American studies. Yeah. Your interest.
Yeah.
Yeah. Besides China, have you been or doing some research in Southeast Asia?
Yeah, I was in Singapore for 3 years between
Oh.
2016 to 2013 to 2016.
Mhm.
And I was in Indonesia twice
Nice.
last year. Yeah.
Oh,
And this coming November, I'm going to
for a holiday
KL.
or doing research?
KL, no, for a
Oh.
conference. Well, both in Indonesia, both for a conference, and then I extended the time to do some sightseeing there. It's a beautiful country.
Yeah, yeah. So maybe you haven't heard about Semarang. So our university is in Semarang, Central Java,
Mm.
and
Where is it?
in capital province of Central Java. So it's about maybe 1 hour flight from Jakarta, and
Okay.
it's another
I
island.
was in Georgia.
Oh yeah, it's 3 hour by car.
Car, yeah,
Ah,
yeah. And
Semarang,
then I was also in Surabaya.
Surabaya,
Mm,
East Java, yeah.
mm.
Oh, Java.
So you are teaching a big class, huh?
Yeah, actually, this is every course we have 3 class. So in every year we have quite a big student, more than 100 students for every year. So for this integrated Eurasia lecture and sociology of development, we have around 120, 30 students. So it's quite a big class.
Yeah, that's good. I'm on sabbatical this year, so I'm not teaching. But I normally teach an Asian community class that focus on intra-Asian migrations.
Mhm.
And that class is 150 students, and it's also supported by Eurasia Foundation.
Yeah, that's why that's why we're
Yeah.
connected.
Were you in the conference last year in
Yeah,
Thailand?
yeah, we in Bangkok. Yeah,
Yeah, in Bangkok.
yeah. I saw you in Bangkok in conference in Bangkok.
Yeah, yeah. So
That's
you
why
look
I
familiar
know
too.
your name and your university because to input in one of our lecture. So this is our third year actually.
Yeah, I have taught the class for 4 years.
Oh
So
yeah.
so I take a break this year and then I'm teaching it again next year.
Okay. So what the name of the course?
It's called cross-border
Oh.
migrations, community formation, and migration in a globalized world, something like that.
Repatriation. So we also
And
plan.
and I also open up the Zoom for students from all over the world. So if students are interested in my class in winter 2026, like from January to March, then they are welcome to Zoom in. So it's going to be 6 p.m., so which is an hour earlier than this time when I teach the class. So I teach the class later in the afternoon in order to have students from Asia.
Yeah, that's great. These are our big difference of time zone.
Yeah, yeah. So I normally push the class to the end of the day, like from 5 p.m. my time. Now it's 7 p.m., right? My
Yeah,
time.
yeah.
So from 5 p.m. my time to 6:15.
Yeah, because in Asia, around 9 or 10 a.m.
Yeah. Mm,
Oke.
Okay.
Ya, Raffi ya hari ini MC-nya.
Iya, Ibu.
Oke, sudah siap?
Sudah, Ibu.
Oke, bentar. So, Prof. Zhou, we will start by opening first. Yeah, we have,
Okay.
so our committee MC and moderator will be led by one of our students. So we take turn to our student to becoming MC or committee or moderator. So please, if any flaw or something, please be understanding. Oke, we will start, Prof. Zhu. Teman-teman, kita mulai ya. Silakan, Raffi.
Baik, Ibu. Teman-teman bisa untuk on cam terlebih dahulu sebelum kita memulai acara pada pagi hari ini. Ayo teman-teman on cam terlebih dahulu. Oke, terima kasih yang telah on cam. Oke. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Shalom, Om Swastiastu, Namo Buddhaya, Salam Kebajikan, Rahayu, Rahayu, Rahayu. Peace be upon us all. The Honorable Coordinator of Sociology and Anthropology Education Study Program and person in charge of the Eurasia Lecture Series, Dr. Atika Wijaya. The Honorable Speaker, Prof. Minzo, PhD, Professor of Sociology and Asian American Studies, University of California, Los Angeles. The Honorable Lecturers of the Sociology and Anthropology Education Study Program, and fellow students and happy attendees. Let us not forget to express our gratitude to God Almighty because of His grace. We can meet today in the event of the third lecture series of SAF Batch 3 with the theme Sustainable Development in Asian Community, Migration and Development from the Sending Country Perspective, the case of China. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me, Raffi Aditya Saputra, as the host of the third lecture series, SAF Batch 3 today. To start this event, let us pray according to our respective religion and belief. Prayer is welcome. Prayer is over. Thank you. The next event is a speech and report from the person in charge of the Eurasia Lecture Series from Sociology and Anthropology Education by Dr. Atika Wijaya. To Mrs. Dr. Atika Wijaya, we invite you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Raffi, for the MC for today. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Selamat pagi, good morning, honorable lecturer and faculty member, and of course our honorable guest, Prof. Minzu from University of California, Los Angeles, and our dear students. So today, yeah, after a long holiday, We are back with the third series of Eurasia lecture series, and we are especially privileged to welcome our esteemed speaker, Professor Min Zhou. She is a renowned scholar in the field of sociology and Asian American studies. Today, Prof. Zhou will deliver her lecture entitled Migration and Development from the Sending Country Perspective, the Case of China. And so, Prof. Zhou, this lecture is a part of Eurasia lecture series, and this is our third year. So we are very grateful to have you here now. This year, we integrated this Eurasia lecture series into Sociology of Development course. So today's participants are the second year students from Sociology and Anthropology education student. So we also have several lecturers from Sociology and Anthropology education study program, and also from Faculty of Social and Political Science, Universitas Negeri Semarang. Dan untuk teman-teman, kita sangat berbangga dan senang hari ini kita kedatangan Prof. Min Zhou dengan perbedaan waktu 14 jam. Jadi di saat kita memulai hari di pagi hari ini, Prof. Min Zhou akan menutup harinya dengan memberikan kuliah kepada teman-teman karena di Los Angeles sudah pukul 7 malam ya. Jadi perbedaan zona waktu ini kita tetap bisa terhubung ya. Prof. Zhou yang sedang ada di Los Angeles, Amerika Serikat. Jadi saya harap kuliah hari ini teman-teman dengan dapat semangat untuk mengikuti, dapat menginspirasi dan menggugah pemikiran teman-teman mahasiswa dalam merespon isu-isu global maupun lokal. So once again, thank you very much Prof. Zhou for being with us. Dan juga terima kasih atas kehadirannya Bapak Ibu dosen dan juga teman-teman mahasiswa, dan selamat mengikuti kegiatan pagi hari ini. Enjoy the lecture. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you for Dr. Atika Wijaya. Respected guests, the next session is the event we have been waiting for, namely the lecture by Prof. Min Zhou, PhD. Before we invite Prof. Zhou, we will read the CV of the speaker first. Hello, Prof. Zhou. Good night. How are you today?
I'm good.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. Prof. Zhou, previously allow me to read your curriculum vitae. However, I apologize as I will only read a few part of it. But honestly, I'm very impressed with your track record in academic activities, which is so detailed that it can be summarized neatly in 57 or 59 pages. It's a lot. Okay. Prof. Min Zhou, PhD, currently has a lot professional career. As we know, she is distinguished professor of sociology and Asian American Studies, UCLA Walter and Shirley Wang Endowed Chair in U.S.-China Relation and Communication, UCLA Director, UCLA Asia Pacific Center member, National Academy of Science member, and American Academy of Art and Science. Her education experience such as a Bachelor of Arts in English, Sun Yat-sen University, China in January 1982, Master of Arts in Sociology, SUNY, Sani Albany in December 1985, Certificate of Graduate Study in Urban Policy, Sani Albany in May 1988, and Doctor of Philosophy in Sociology, State University of New York at Albany in May 1989. Her PhD dissertation is called The Enclave Economy and Immigrant Incorporation in New York City's Chinatown. UMI dissertation, Information Services, 1988. 1989, sorry, Advisor John R. Logan, Sonny Ambani. Prof. Zhou has research areas such as migration and development, race and ethnicity, and urban sociology. Her latest publication is Tang Renji, retranslated into Chinese by Sam Nango with a preface to the new edition, Beijing the Commercial Press. And latest journal is Chinese Entrepreneurship in a Globalist World, Culture, Place, and Mobilities. Journal of Small Business and Entrepreneurship, Fall 34, number 4, 2022. To Prof. Minzo, PhD, we invite you to deliver the material for 40 minutes. The time is yours, Mr. Zhou.
Thank you very much, Ravi, for a nice introduction. And also thank you, Professor Vijaya, for your invitation. And thank you all for coming to my lecture. It's great seeing you here online. Let me share my screen. Can you see me? Can you hear me okay? And you can see the slide, right?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. As Rafi introduces me, and my lecture today is on migration and development from the sending country perspective, and I'm using the case of China to illustrate that. So today's lecture, I am going to touch on basically 2 points. One is I give you a brief introduction of contemporary trend of international migration. Secondly, I will introduce to you some contemporary patterns of migration to and from China. And I wrap it up by drawing on some implications for homeland development. So first, global context, contemporary trends in international migration. We all know that the world is on the move, and international migration has been constant, and people are constantly crossing borders. And according to United Nations Department of Economics and Social Affairs, and the current number of international migrants increased to 281 million in 2020, and 48%, nearly half of these international migrants are female. So as you see in this chart, international migration has been increased constantly in number and also in proportion, even though, in percentage, the only like 3 to 5% of the world's population are international migrants, but those migrants are quite concentrated. So in some countries, like the United States, their impact is quite significant. So in terms of destination, international migrants normally head for the global north, that is the advanced industrial countries or the developed countries. Um, so normally is in Europe, North American, and Oceania. So about 55% of the international migrants continue to head to the global north. However, the global south, that is the developing world, has been has been attracting increasing number of international migrants as well. So about 45% of the migrants go to the global south, like China. Even though China is no longer like a developing country or a less developed country, but it has start to attract international migrants. And Southeast Asia also has seen increasing flow of migrants crossing their national borders. All right, so here is the number of by the top 4 receiving or sending countries of international migrants. So again, like the global north continue to attract immigrants. So the USA, Germany, Saudi Arabia, and Russia are the top 4 countries of receiving immigrants. As you can see, the USA and Germany are part of the global north, and then Saudi Arabia and Russia is part of the global south. And then in terms of sending countries, India, Mexico, Russia, and China are the 4th largest sending countries. And so they are all from the global south. And again, you can note that Russia, right? Russia is both the largest sending country and also the largest receiving country. In other words, when we talk about migration and migration or immigration, countries of migrations, they can be both simultaneously. Okay, second point, the contemporary patterns of migration from and to China. Now, in migration studies or in the study of migration and development, sociologists and also social scientists concern um, concerned about 2 major questions. One is why people move, right? And then the second major research concern is once people arrive in a host country or in a receiving country, how well they adapt to or integrate into their new homeland, as well as how immigrants affect developments in sending and receiving countries. So now I would like to talk about these points with the view of China. Um, so if we are looking at Chinese immigration or emigration, we'll see China has been one of the top sending countries. So of the more than 10 million international immigrants to outside of China, right? Emigrating out of China, about a quarter of them heading to the United States. In other words, United States takes the lion's share of Chinese immigrants. If you are seeing this chart, Chinese immigration to the United States increased significantly. So each year, it's somewhere between 40,000 to 60,000 each year, right? So in the decade of 2010 to 2019, there were more than 700,000 immigrants from China migrated to the United States. Now, if we are looking at migration to the United States, Chinese migration, they are very highly selected, right? So more than half of the Chinese immigrants to the United States held a bachelor's degree or more, compared to other largest immigrant group to the US, Mexican immigrants. So only 10% of Mexican immigrants have a college degree or more. So that selectivity has a lot to say about how well they adapt to the host country. And part of the reason is that economic reform and marketization in China give rise to a wealthy elite and also a growing middle class. So a lot of the middle class members seek emigration not only for a better life, but for better employment, investment, and educational opportunities for their children. As a matter of fact, um, they send children, or they themselves migrate in order to provide for their better educational opportunities for their children. So if we are looking at Chinese migration to the United States, student migrants are a potential group of immigrants. And a lot of students, after they studying in the United States, they get jobs in the US, and then they become professional migrants. And there is also a significant number of investors and entrepreneurs. So Chinese immigrants, the Chinese in China consider the U.S. as the most preferred destination for for education. So other destinations include Canada, Australia, the UK, Japan, and Singapore, or Asia's West. So China has consistently the number one source country of international students in the U.S. since 2000. And then Chinese immigrant students also, as I mentioned, also serve as the main source of skill migration because after you complete your college education in the US, get your degree, you can get a 1 to 2 year practical training in the US in which you could have your employer to sponsor your migration, but you have to first get an H-1B non-immigrant visa, and then through the non-immigrant visa, you get your green card and eventually become naturalized citizens. So here's is a chart for visas, H-1B visas. That is the student turned migrant, the skill migrants. And you can see India takes the lion's share of H-1B visa. And then next would be the Chinese. And the third largest group getting H-1B visa are a distant third from Chinese and Indians. And then investor visas, like the EB-5 visas, that is for investors who have $1 million to invest in the US. Then you can basically buy yourself a visa, an immigrant visa. So China in that visa, China takes the first place in getting the EB-5 visa. So in other words, both students, the resourceful immigrants include students who turn professional migrants as well as investors. So in the new millennium, that is after 2000, we can see some changing trends of Chinese immigration out of China and into the United States. Prior to 2000, there was a low return rate among Chinese immigrants, especially Chinese students. And then since 2000, we can see that the rate of return among Chinese students has been increasing because of greater job opportunities in China. And then also we see increasing transnational practices among immigrants who have already settled in the US. And then also since 2000, China launched its Belt and Road Initiative. And Belt and Road Initiative also caused emigration from China to BRI country, including Indonesia, as a matter of fact. So there has been a visible number of Chinese, both investors, entrepreneurs, as students, as well as immigrants to Indonesia and to other Southeast Asian countries that has signed into the Belt and Road Initiative with China. And then there is also, we can also see that immigration into China from the BRI countries. So Chinese Belt and Road Initiative was a Chinese government initiative to invest in the global South. So before COVID, the Chinese government invested a total of 200 billion US dollars and having 138 BRI countries with projects or signed MOUs. So 38 of them in Africa. So there are a lot of the Chinese has involved invest in a lot of countries in Africa, and that also ushered in a lot of Chinese Africans migrants to China. So almost all BRI countries are in the global south, with half from lower income countries. So as China invests in these countries, Chinese immigration also into those countries, as well as emigration from those countries to China. So that is the changing pattern of China's emigration that is leaving China, and immigration into China as a consequence of China's BRI initiative. So some of the results is indicated in this slide. First, uh, the numbers of the numbers to Africa and the Middle East has been on the rise. That is, the number of Chinese going to Africa and going to the Middle East has been increasing. And those Chinese initially are skilled or unskilled labor working for Chinese companies. And later on, there are individual entrepreneurs also moving to those countries. And then there is also immigration, like in the influx of foreigners into China. And as you probably would know, unlike the United States, that is a country of immigrants, China is not a country of international migration. But now China confronts with the challenges of migration and resettlement, because China doesn't give green cards to foreigners, much less naturalization. And now China attracts immigrants mostly from Africa, the Middle East, and Central Asia. And those are the regions that China is heavily invests. Um, and those immigrants, they are mostly coming to China, and they resettle into some of the international trade and business cities like Guangzhou. I was originally from Guangzhou. And then Yiwu in Zhejiang province. And these two cities attract the most foreigners from the BRI countries. Here is a picture of Guangzhou. So Guangzhou is a modern city. It's a huge global city, very well developed. And so it attracts immigrants from Africa, from different countries in Africa, and into some of the urban villages in Guangzhou. So those Africans are mostly former students studying in China. So they returned to Africa, and then they came back to China to capture economic opportunities here, as a lot of them are traders and international business people. And later on, once they come and settle, they bring families, or they establish families with Chinese women in Guangzhou. However, China was facing the challenge of how to resettle them, because China doesn't have any viable immigration and resettlement policy. So that's something that the Chinese governments are trying to come up with some policies to resettle immigrants. Okay, so I'm running this very fast, so I hope we have some time for interaction. So lastly, I want to say something about international migration to and from China and the implication for homeland development. So existing research kind of have found that migrations have seldom succeeded in completely transform either places of origin or destination, but they do cause changes in sending and receiving countries. But very few in very few cases, almost no cases, that migration could possibly transform places, right? Even like cities in Los Angeles, we have some 40% of the population are immigrants. Still, Los Angeles is um, is continue to run on its logic. So it's even though there are a lot of immigrants, but the the basic social structure and the law and the legal frame, the economy remain pretty much like American. So when we look at permanent resettlement, the impact at home. So permanent resettlement is once migrants move, then they move to another country to resettle. So that's permanent resettlement. Permanent resettlement normally would cause negative impact at home because of depopulation, like people leave the hometown. And it would cause not only depopulation, but also brain drain, as well as it nurture a culture of emigration. So those who remain in the home village or hometown, they are waiting for migration. They are waiting for their visa, for their families to sponsor their migration. So in that light, the impact of immigration is negative on the hometown. However, if migrants are constantly sending remittances home, that would help hometown development. However, not every family have remittances, right? So it could contribute to reinforcing the existing relationship of economic power and class privilege, both in the home village and also the sending community. In other words, when we look at remittances, on the one hand, it could have a positive impact on economic development at home. But on the other hand, it may have a negative effect on changing the social structure, on uh, because it could reinforce social inequality of the families who doesn't receive remittances. They would continue to remain poor. If anything, they become poorer because the families receiving remittances, they could possibly boost the cost of living in their hometown, right? And then also, we have seen that um, migrants are not just settled in one place, but they become transnational. However, the impact of transnational immigration, like migrant transnationalism, are limited. So we will see that those immigrant transnational practices uh, have positive impact on homeland development are not huge because the number involved in transnational practices are limited. So here are some main findings about transnational practices among contemporary um, Chinese immigrants. Okay, so those who are highly educated men, naturalized citizens are more likely than others to be transnational. And then the sociologically disadvantaged immigrants are more likely than their middle class counterparts to send remittances home. Now, the implication of that, right? So when you send remittances, middle class immigrants who settle in a different place, they are less likely to regularly send monetary remittances home. It's the low income class migrants that are more likely to send remittances home. So you can imagine that the amount of remittances sent home is not huge. And it could cause, it could exacerbate social inequality both at home and in the diaspora, because those lower class, lower income members, they have the pressure of sending money home, so leaving them less money to spend in their host society. And then of the families who receive money, then they could spend more, and inadvertently they could cause increase in the cost of living, which put pressure on those families at home who do not have access to immigrant remittances, right? Okay, and then why immigrants send, like, the working class immigrants are more likely than middle class to send money home, and they send money home um for different purpose. One is for collective consumption. That is, the money gets sent home. They could build roads, schools, and public structures. And then the other is for conspicuous consumption, that is to build houses in their home village. And a lot of those houses built in migrant sending communities, actually, they don't have a lot of people, they don't have their family live there. Rather, they have distant relatives live there. Now, why are immigrants doing this? Because they do this for social status compensation when they don't have social status recognition in the host country. Whereas middle class, they already achieve social status in the host country. So they are less likely than the working class to send money home. Does it make sense? Okay, now here are the traditional migrant sending region. And a lot of migrants, when they send money, they are likely to send money to their hometown villages. Um, so historically, Fujian and Guangdong province in the south, like this part, are the traditional sending country regions. And now the Chinese immigrants to the United States, they hail from all over China. So not just Fujian and Guangdong. And then in Fujian province, a lot of the immigrants, especially undocumented immigrants, hail from Fuzhou. So those are migrant towns. And when a lot of people leaving their hometown, leaving their village, and people would continue to want to leave because, as I said, it nurtures a culture of migration. And then when we look at migrant remittances that get sent home, one is for collective consumption. That is, they build churches, temples, um, uh, in order to highlight their own status. So those are the undocumented immigrants sending money home in their villages in Fuzhou to build these churches. And uh, there are there are altars for the Buddhists and the Buddhist church and then Christian church. And they do that for collective consumption to highlight their contribution in the home country in order to go for social status recognition at home. Since they don't have social status, they are marginalized in the in the United States. And another collective consumption thing that migrants send remittances home to build is like a village park, and then a gate and some monuments that have the name of the donor ingrained in these monuments, right? And then they have the village gate, and then they have the village park. Um, so that is for highlighting their contribution. And then there is also another form of conspicuous consumption, that is the homes built or being built in villages of Fuzhou. So those are huge mansions built, and let's look at these two, right? And these buildings are very much like the one in northeastern United States, like the building style and that. Whereas this one is somewhat resemble Europe, right? So that suggests that some immigrants go to the U.S. and some go to um, go, go to Europe. And then when they send money home, they build these huge homes that are not of much use by themselves because they don't come back. Especially for the undocumented immigrants, it's hard for them to come back and forth across borders because they don't have papers, right? So they do that in order for their family members, and in many cases, distant family members, to consume and then to also celebrate their achievement. So one of the village cadres put it in this way about migrants sending money home to build huge houses. Your house is the most visible statement of success. You want to show success as soon as possible in order to justify your move and to make your family feel proud. So everybody is doing it because no one wants to be to lag behind. Um, I cannot think of any family with relatives in the United States that I know who has not done that. So it's a very powerful culture of migration as well as culture of conspicuous consumption here. Okay, lastly, um, I will draw some implications of migrant remittances for hometown development. So first, those sent remittances home are those who settle in a new land. And remittances benefit individual migrants left behind families and their hometowns. However, these remittances tend to revive tradition in ways that fuel competition for extravagant consumption. I don't have time to flesh out that point. So conspicuous consumption by building houses is one, like having a lot of those ritual, like birthday parties or burial parties, huge ones that that attract not just your family members and friends, but also villages uh, that boost up competition for these kind of consumption. So people compete for who throw the largest parties in the village or in town. And it also drives up cost of living, reinforcing the existing social inequality, as well as create pressure for continual emigration. Because if you don't have members who are migrating to a wealthier country or higher income family, country, then you are not able to compete here for consumption, right? So that create pressure for emigration. Okay, my last slide is so to summarize, migration flows are impacted by factors beyond economic push-pull. So one is if we are looking at why people move, we should go beyond the domestic and international political uh, factors. Those are important factors like war, persecution, human rights violation, and the threat of violence. However, today, climate change, I haven't touched on that. Climate change has also caused people to move, right? As well as network, social network, people you know, uh, and the migration industries, like the intermediaries that facilitate migration, also have an impact, as well as, by country relations. Just now I said the Chinese Belt and Road Initiative create by country relationship, and that by country relationship cause both emigration and immigration from those countries. And immigration regime, I mean immigration policy. And so there are divergent consequences of permanent and circular migration from development. Okay, with that, I'm going to complete my lecture, and I welcome questions. Thank you. Here is my beautiful campus at UCLA. We always have a blue sky. And that's the building of sociology. Sociology and anthropology are in this building. Okay, let me
Yes.
stop share.
Okay, thank you, Prof. Zhou, for your presentation. Okay, for the audience, Feel free to ask a new question, any question to Prof. Zhou. Silakan kepada teman-teman jika ingin bertanya, dipersilahkan untuk bertanya tentang materi yang sudah dipresentasikan oleh Prof. Zhou pada pagi hari ini.
Don't be shy.
Boleh pakai bahasa Indonesia, nanti akan dibantu untuk di-translate. Good morning, Prof. Zhou. I'm
Good
sorry
morning.
I came late. My name is Hartati. I am one of the lecturer in Universitas Negeri Semarang. So I'm sorry I joined the Zoom maybe a few minutes ago, but I can still um, capture what have you share to us.
Thank
So,
you.
silakan mahasiswa. Saya rasa yang tidak open cam, saya dan Butika bersepakat untuk mungkin tidak dimasukkan ke presensi hari ini. Baik. Okay, the first one is Ime. Please open your mic.
Terima kasih atas waktunya Bu Lilis dan Raffi sebagai moderator. Yang ingin saya tanyakan itu kan saat ini di Indonesia itu kan ada sebuah tren mengenai hashtag kabur aja dulu, yang mana hashtag itu ada sebagai apa ya, representasi atau respon atas kondisi sosial politik yang dirasa masyarakat itu sudah tidak baik-baik saja begitu. Nah, dari penjelasan Prof. Minzu yang sudah dijelaskan tadi, saya melihat bahwa migrasi itu kan banyak polanya gitu, pola dari alasan migrasi itu terjadi. Nah, apakah sekarang ini seluruh pola yang ada, alasan-alasan dari adanya migrasi ini bisa menjadi solusi khususnya bagi para pemegang wewenang, dan apakah hari ini itu migrasi ini masih relevan sebagai sebuah solusi dari permasalahan yang ada di suatu negara begitu.
Thank you. Someone translate that for me.
Okay. So, yeah. Prof. Zhou, maybe I can maybe a few information for you that in Indonesia now we have a viral slogan in among the youth, kabur aja dulu. It means we have to get out from Indonesia because the social, economical, and political situation in Indonesia is unstable now. So, in this situation, do you think that migration or move from one country to other country, going abroad, is the best solution for maybe among the youth to make their better future, and how to open their maybe some opportunity to get a better job, better salary, better life. And I think youth, among the youth now in Indonesia, still have any hope when they do migration, they will achieve that. What do you think about that?
Well, why people migrate, right? The economic factor is always there. People migrate because they want better economic opportunities. So they normally would migrate from low-income countries to higher-income countries, from countries like unemployment or lack of economic opportunities are one of the most important factors of pushing people out. Now, the question is, who can actually leave and get resettled in a different country? And that has a lot of barriers, right? So either you are a refugee, and refugees normally have a very difficult start because you are stateless, right? So you are so it's very hard for you to migrate by claiming your refugee status. Like in the United States, you see a lot of refugees crossing the southern border from Mexico to the United States. And then those are undocumented immigrants. And for them, they could claim their refugee status and ask for asylum and whatnot. But the process of legalization takes very long. So that immediately puts you into a precarious situation, right? And because if you migrate without status, it would be very hard for you to make a living and also make a better life, right? So I think that for immigrants with networks and also for regular immigrants, they may achieve their economic goal of migrate for a better life. But for a lot of other immigrants, they don't choose to migrate because they feel that migration under these circumstances would not give them better opportunities. So a lot of the times they might be getting misinformation about better life abroad without knowing that even legal immigrants, they have to cross, they are facing a lot of challenges of adapting. So I would say that one of the there are many reasons to manage migration. One way that the government could manage out migration is development, right? It's to create jobs and develop the country. So that is one way. However, we are now in a globalized world. So if you are in the developing South, you are not gaining the upper hand of development. And in a way, you also got exploited by big capital corporations and also the global north, right? So it's a struggle and it's not an easy solution. And to me, migration is not the only solution. Well, if here we are talking about cross-border migration, but there are also a lot of internal migrations too, and they are going the same logic. Like people migrate from rural areas to cities to find better jobs, and that also could be part of, I think, could be part of the migration studies. Even though what I talk about is more like cross-national migrations.
Okay, Prof. Zhou, maybe I will translate it for my student. The point of what have you answer for the maybe it's an opening question that is give a good mark for about the how we imagining the migration as a solution or maybe open new problem for us. Oke, jadi jawabannya Prof. Zhou tadi terkait dengan pertanyaannya Ime, apakah migrasi itu menjadi solusi yang bisa dipakai karena kita di sini sekarang sedang dalam kondisi yang secara ekonomi, politik, sosial kita sedang tidak stabil, apalagi kebijakan-kebijakan ekonomi kita juga kalah bersaing, sehingga migrasi mungkin jadi sebuah solusi jika kita punya sumber daya manusia yang baik. Karena struggling atau perjuangan di negara orang itu juga tidak mudah. Kita yang tidak terbiasa berjuang di negara Indonesia mungkin akan merasa jauh lebih payah jika berhadapan dengan kondisi di negara lain, apalagi di Amerika ketika itu adalah tujuan dari dunia gitu. Bagaimana mereka membangun American Dream, hidup bebas, bisa berusaha dengan berbagai situasi yang ada. Tapi kalau kita tidak punya background modal, baik itu modal kultural ya, terutama pendidikan dan sebagainya, kita tidak akan bisa bersaing. Bahkan bisa jadi itu akan menimbulkan masalah baru. Jadi apakah migrasi menjadi satu-satunya jalan? Bagi Prof. Zhou mungkin tidak, karena yang bisa dilakukan bisa jadi adalah bagaimana membangun negara itu sendiri untuk menciptakan lapangan pekerjaan dan lain sebagainya. Jadi teman-teman saya rasa juga harus aware ya dengan kondisi sekarang. Mungkin 5 tahun ke depan teman-teman adalah pencari kerja yang aktif gitu. Jadi apa yang terjadi sekarang bisa jadi adalah sesuatu hal yang bisa menjadi warning untuk tahun-tahun yang akan datang. Oke, Prof. Zhou, maybe the first,
Thank you.
yeah, the first question, Imei, thank you for your question. Maybe another student want to share about your mind? Okay. Prof. Zhou, I will ask you something. This is
Sure.
maybe I have a lot of questions, but something that I want to underline is about the first is in America now, Trump policy maybe for people in another country, it is very have a big threat. Maybe the one thing is about the migration itself. The first is how is the condition of the I think I read a lot of migration wave come to America to reach their American dream, but Trump also give the defensive policy about how to make they wouldn't come again to America. Trump forbid another people from another country, maybe like Indonesia or maybe Mexico, to come to America. And what do you think about it? As a people who live in America and you have Asian blood, what about it? Maybe this is the first question. The second question, a few times ago, we also listen how the Asian hate is developed among people in America. And what do you think about it?
Okay, two good questions. The first one, don't get me started on it. I did not vote for our current president because I am smart, because I think he's a crazy guy that disrupt the whole world. So I disapprove of him. So talking about, well, you know, I'm I'm half of America, right? The other half disagree with me, and I disagree with half of them. So nonetheless, the United States is a democracy, even though our president is trying to disrupt uh, that democracy, but I still have faith in American democracy. So in 2 years, we'll see the result, and in 4 years, he's out. But we have to, we have to to sustain the pain of um, um, having this disruption, so to speak. Now, Trump has always been anti immigrants. So from his first term, he built a wall, and he's thinking that the U.S. government have control over migration. When just now I said, the world is increasingly connected and globalized. Like one country cannot control the flow, right? Even you have policy. If you have policy to restrict immigration, immigrants won't come through the front door, but they would come through other means, through the back door or other means, because immigration policy can only do so much in managing migration. And then the more important point is that the United States is a nation of immigrants, is the land of the free, right? So there is this moral basis to accept immigrants who are in need, and also we as a nation need immigrant labor, both highly skilled and low skilled labor, right? Can you imagine without a day of immigrant work, and our city would be in turmoil, right? The bathrooms would be dirty, and the streets would be dirty. Nobody would pick up the garbage and whatnot, and nobody would mow our lawn, and nobody would take care of our children. So immigrant labor is an integral part of the U.S. economy. We need immigrants, and also we have the moral um, obligation to take in those who are in need, especially refugees. Um, so in my view, the administration is doing something wrong, very destructive to the country by restricting immigration. However, the good thing is the U.S. has a very strong civil society. So nonprofit organizations and civil society organizations are organized to resist extreme actions from the government, right? Even though now there are extreme actions, some of the actions that that have immediate impact is on international students. We have students who have their student visa revoked, and the government would detain the students and ask the students to leave the country for suspect of doing something wrong. But those suspect is suspect, right? And then they are likely to be profiled by race and religion and national origin as well. So it kind of further, like those kind of extreme policy would further divide the country, divide the nation. That is not good. So um, I'm also hopeful that with the with an educated America, and also with the effort of nonprofit and civil rights organizations, we could resist um, some of the wrongdoings by the government. Now, and then also it's related, right? The anti-Asian hate that was escalated since COVID-19. And also it was kind of invoked by President Trump in his first term because he identified the virus as China virus. And all of a sudden, the Chinese and also Chinese-looking Asians become the target of, and the target is really on is it's kind of U.S. has unfortunately has a racialized system as well. So the racialized system has a lot of bad things, but the bad things were kind of keep docile by law, right? So when the administration, when there are, authorities that kind of uh, uh, give approval to some of the wrongdoing, those wrongdoing will become enacted. So that also requires, like, we face this anti-Asian hate and also the discrimination as our daily life, and we know how to deal with them, but it's not like a recent thing. It's historical and it's embedded in our system. So in order to resolve this problem, we have to go deep into the system and keep on, fighting and changing the system.
Okay. Okay.
So the United States is not heaven.
Okay. Maybe for people from another country, maybe America still has a image like heaven.
It
Okay.
does because it's a country of immigrants. So oft I live in quite a few countries, and still the United States, for better or for worse, to me, it's the best country for immigrants.
Yeah.
Even though, there are a lot of systemic racism and
Mhm.
discrimination, but we can fight. We
Yeah.
can fight it, right?
Okay.
In other countries, even when you face discrimination or racism like that, you cannot fight. Here, you can.
Okay. Okay. Keep your spirit, Prof. Zhou.
Yeah, of
Okay.
course.
Okay. Maybe I will translate through to my student first. Before we go to another question. Let me translate for my student. Jadi pertanyaannya Bu Lilis ini sebenarnya memantik supaya teman-teman bisa lebih banyak berdialog dengan Prof. Zhou terkait dengan hal-hal apa saja yang terjadi di Amerika terkait dengan bagaimana orang Amerika itu kan menjadi semacam melting pot, jadi tempat ketemunya orang-orang dari seluruh penjuru dunia untuk mereka menyusun mimpi-mimpi menjadi orang Amerika yang bebas, menjadi orang Amerika yang demokratis begitu. Jadi ada dua hal yang saya tanyakan. Yang pertama, bagaimana dengan kebijakan Presiden Trump yang melarang imigran itu masuk ketika dia menjadi pemimpin di sana? Prof. Zhou mengatakan sebagai orang waras saya tidak memilih dia dan saya cukup bisa stay away dari isu yang disampaikan oleh si Trump itu, tapi bahwa melarang orang masuk itu juga sesuatu yang tidak mungkin karena sekali lagi Amerika adalah part of the globalization. Jadi tidak mungkin orang melarang masuk. Selain itu, dengan melarang orang masuk artinya menjadikan pertumbuhan ekonomi di Amerika itu menjadi melambat. Kenapa? Karena banyak sekali tenaga kerja migran, terutama migran asing itu yang mengambil job-job atau pekerjaan-pekerjaan yang ada pada level, mohon maaf, blue collar itu menengah ke bawah. Jadi pekerjaan-pekerjaan yang terkait yang yang low salary, yang pendapatannya itu rendah begitu. Nah, ini yang tidak mungkin diambil oleh orang-orang Amerika yang punya paspor Amerika, warga negara Amerika. Jadi, kalau itu kemudian dilarang, siapa yang akan mengerjakan pekerjaan-pekerjaan itu gitu? ini akan menghambat pertumbuhan ekonomi Amerika sendiri. Jadi kalau dilarang, itu rasanya juga tidak mungkin. Tapi bahwa itu adalah kebijakannya Presiden Trump, ya itulah realita yang harus dihadapi gitu. Tadi Prof. Zhou mengatakan masih tetap akan bertahan dengan penderitaan-penderitaan itu di masa yang akan datang selama presidennya masih si itu gitu. Yang kedua tentang Asian hate. Teman-teman nanti bisa buka Asian hate itu apa di Amerika, bahwa Asian hate itu sesuatu yang mengemuka ketika COVID itu mulai berlangsung di tahun 2019. Jadi COVID itu dianggap sebagai virus Cina. China virus gitu ya. Jadi orang Cina itu menyebarkan virus COVID gitu. Pertanyaannya adalah virusnya kan di sana gitu. Orang-orang di Cina yang nggak pernah ke sana, yang lahir di Amerika bisa jadi itu kena juga gitu. Bagaimana mereka dibenci karena dianggap menyebarkan virus. Jadi apakah Asian hate itu masih berlangsung? Iya, masih berlangsung. Tapi em, seperti yang Prof. Zhou katakan tadi bahwa eh, ketika itu tetap masih ada. Beruntungnya orang Amerika adalah terbiasa menjadi negara yang demokrasi. Menyampaikan gagasan, menyampaikan pendapat, berbeda pendapat itu sesuatu hal yang biasa. Maka ketika ada sesuatu yang tidak sesuai dengan apa yang mereka alami, maka mereka fight back. Mereka kemudian melakukan perlawanan, entah itu dengan civil society atau lembaga-lembaga non pemerintah, atau bagaimana kemudian bisa jadi suara-suara mereka yang didengungkan itu menjadi lebih didengarkan gitu. Nah, artinya apa? Eh, apa ya? Prejudice, prasangka-prasangka terhadap orang-orang yang berbeda, itu walaupun di negara Amerika yang mengatakan dirinya sebagai negara nomor satu demokrasinya di dunia, itu juga masih terjadi. Tapi warga negaranya punya keberdayaan untuk melawan. Nah, ini mungkin yang belum terjadi di Indonesia secara umum. So the difference about Indonesia and America is maybe the citizenship in Indonesia, maybe a step, maybe American step ahead from Indonesia if we compare to Indonesian people. Because in Amerika they have empowering, jadi mereka punya keberdayaan. Sementara kita kebijakan kita sudah ada, tapi mungkin belum bisa dilaksanakan. In Indonesia, we have protection of the multicultural situation in Indonesia, but the application, the implementation of the policy is still have a lack situation from what we've dreamed of and what we have to face in the reality. Jadi seperti itu ya teman-teman mahasiswa. Boleh saya sedikit memberikan pemantik. Mungkin yang lain bisa ditanyakan apapun lah yang ini bisa disambung dengan yang lain karena kita masih punya banyak waktu untuk berdiskusi dengan Prof. Zhou. Silakan. Boleh pakai bahasa
Thank you.
Indonesia? Boleh pakai bahasa Indonesia, nanti akan dibantu translate-nya.
Thank you. It was good. Must be good translation.
I hope. I hope. I hope. Oke, bagaimana yang lain? Silahkan. You can ask Prof. Zhou anything. Maybe the opportunity to study abroad in UCLA as a sociology student in master degree, maybe. Prof. Zhou.
Yeah, well, studying in the US is expensive
Mhm,
because for international students, they have to pay tuition.
mhm,
And that's to countries, to lower income countries is very
mhm,
hard for students
mhm.
to come to study. And students may come with fellowship from their
Yeah.
country.
Mhm,
The university may also offer scholarship. But we are a public university, so we prioritize our own students from the state, like even out of state, the students from out of state, they have to pay tuition, the same as international students. And we seldom offer scholarship and fellowship to non-citizen students. So that creates a very daunting barrier for international students studying abroad. And in a way, you think education is an equalizer, but in fact, it's a reinforcer of social inequality. If you have money, then you get good education. Getting good education, you can make more money, right?
Yeah.
So for that, in a lot of countries in a global south, like people have more opportunities to get education equally without having to pay tuition, and that's a way to go. More like welfare state, but not in the US. The US K-12, yes, it's free education, but once you finish high school, you are on your own. Even though the government have different loan program, but still it's very expensive, even for American families to go, to send their kids to college.
Okay. How long for master degree it will take time, Prof. Zhou?
2 years. Normally it's 2 years.
2 years. Okay.
Yeah, 2 to 3 years, 3 years maximum.
Or 3 years
There,
maximum.
there are also 1-year program, but you have to pay, and that the course is very high.
Okay.
And in sociology, we don't accept master's student. We only accept PhD student.
Oh, okay. Only PhD
Yeah.
in UCLA.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, for graduate students.
For graduate student. Maybe I will translate for my student. Maybe it is part to make encourage them to maybe want to feel how to live in the heaven. You say that America
Well,
is.
actually, my advice is if you are looking for studying in the US, sometimes, the private universities are more likely to offer scholarship than public universities, because public universities, they are under the mandate of the state to prioritize students of their own state, right? Whereas private universities, as long as you can pay, you can come, but they also design a lot of scholarship programs to give to students based on income and also based on their merit.
Okay. Yeah, I will translate it for my student. Jadi kalau untuk pendidikan di Amerika, sebenarnya kalau kalian nanti lulus, itu bisa mencari alternatif untuk bisa kuliah. Tadi salah satu solusi untuk kabur aja dulu, itu adalah kuliah di luar negeri. Problemnya adalah kita harus punya modal. Minimal apa? Kemampuan berbahasa Inggris. Itu modal utama kita. Ya, satu itu. Yang kedua adalah beasiswa, karena memang pendidikan sangat mahal apalagi di Amerika ya. Amerika itu kurang lebih 24 jam kalau naik pesawat. Jadi silahkan bersiap-siap pantatnya habis ya di pesawat. Tapi memang itu yang situasi yang harus dihadapi kalau dari Indonesia ya kurang lebih 24 jam gitu perjalanan. Tapi saya rasa itu menjadi sesuatu yang pantas ya, worth it gitu ya kalau kita bisa menembus ke sana begitu. Beberapa kalau di UCLA itu karena dia adalah kampus negeri, sebenarnya juga menawarkan beasiswa. Tapi kalau di UCLA untuk sosiologi itu tidak ada masternya, yang ada adalah PhD program atau S3. Jadi nanti bisa jadi untuk kamu bercita-cita, siapa tahu nanti bisa ketemu Prof. Zhu as a supervisor begitu, sebagai profesor yang akan membimbing begitu. Nah, tapi kalau di Amerika sebenarnya pilihan untuk kuliah itu bisa di kampus-kampus yang private atau swasta. Jadi kalau swasta itu menawarkan beasiswa yang lebih banyak daripada kampus-kampus yang negeri, karena kalau kampus-kampus negeri kan di bawah apa ya pengawasan negara ya, ya seperti di kita lah gitu. Jadi lebih banyak kesempatan atau tawaran beasiswa dari kampus-kampus swasta. Jadi ini semacam ini aja ya, memotivasi Anda untuk kemudian oh ternyata begini ya, apa namanya, melihat kampusnya Prof. Zhu yang seperti itu, kamu bisa membandingkan dengan kampus C6 atau C2 atau C8 begitu ya, kira-kira bisa dibayangkan bagaimana perbandingannya. Tapi saya rasa ini satu hal yang menarik, dengan ada guest lecture semacam ini kita bisa tahu nih, oh di luar itu situasinya seperti apa. Oke,
Thank you.
baik. Ya, oke, Prof. Zhu, eh, my to give a question. Wait. Oh, I see. So they are too shy to.
Yeah,
Uh,
I saw two questions there, but I
yeah,
cannot understand.
yeah, yeah. Okay, okay. Yeah. Wait. I will. Read first. Maybe Bu Nino. Will.
Yeah.
Ya, mungkin Bu Nino will
Yeah.
help to translate
Okay.
faster than me. Oke, dia ada Gayutri. Apa yang sudah dijelaskan, ada banyak faktor yang mempengaruhi banyaknya imigran yang masuk dalam sebuah negara. Apakah imigran ini akan membludak atau semakin banyak dari tahun ke tahun dan bahkan memasuki beberapa besar receiving immigration? Oke.
Gimana
Apakah
kasusnya ya? Di apa di Cina? Di Amerika?
di Amerika ya, di Amerika? Apakah ini akan terus bertambah begitu dari waktu ke waktu, atau sebenarnya bagaimana? Atau mungkin bisa disambungkan dengan kesiapan Amerika sendiri untuk menerima imigran itu gimana gitu kali ya?
Oke. Oke, Prof. Zhu, welcome
Mhm.
to Universitas Negeri Semarang. I'm one of the lecturers also, the friend of Bu Hartati. I would like to um, try to translate my student's question. It is about the future of immigration. What is your opinion about factors affecting the interest of migrant to come into a country? What is the factor causing their interest to move to certain countries? And the second question is about what's your opinion about the possibilities in the future? It will continue to increase like what you have stated in your presentation, or how is the possibilities? I guess this is the two questions given by Gayutri in the chat. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the question. So for the first question, like causes of migration, and just now there was a first question that talk about the economic causes, right? The economic causes are still formidable. That the most important cause for people migrate, but it's not just that. And because migration is highly selective. For one, if economic reason is the primary reason to push people move out of their country, then you will see that the poorest region of the country don't send migrants, right? Those regions that send migrants, they are relatively economically more developed regions in the country. So that suggests that the exposure and like cultural exposure and also connections to a destination country could be a factor, as well as people's network, right? The knowledge, the network that could cause people to move. And now uh, uh, the climate change is also create pressure for migration, right? Earthquake, this natural disasters that would cause people to find a better place to live, to migrate. So, so the causes of migration would continue. Like if you are looking at examining the why people move, it it continued to attract migration scholars to explore how these different forces intersect, right? So it's not just one cause that affect, but it's many different causes come together to intersect. Um, and so that's the causes of migration. Now the possibilities, and I have seen from the night starting, I'm old, starting from the 1980s to now. So I have studied international migration for almost 40 years. Um, so I have seen migration only increase, right? So the trend is increasing migration with some years of decreasing migration. But even with decreasing trend, people are still moving, right? It may not move across the border. It may still move like within the country. So the movement are constant. And I would say it's part of human natural activities. You just, constantly move. The challenge is how the government and also the civil society, how they manage um, the migration and to make migration less disruptive and to do more good for individuals who are moving and for individuals and their families that are moving, right? So that's more challenging. You cannot stop people move, but you can make move less disruptive because movement is not easy. It's not like, oh, I want to move to the United States. If I have a job, if I have a family to sponsor me, then I can move. But not many people have that, right? So if you go other routes, either it incurs very huge economic costs or incur risks, right? When you cross the border, without papers, then you run the risk of even death, right? So consider migrants crossing the south border into the US. They have to cross deserts. And deserts, you get dry out, right? You can be dead there. Um, so so it really is a moral obligation for people and organization and the government to manage migration to make it less disruptive and more contributing to both like the sending country and the receiving country.
Nice, very nice explanation. And it's trigger my question about, do you think there are possibilities of changing the trend? I mean, if now you mention for highest destination of migrants, do you think there will be change on the
Well,
countries?
it's an empirical question. It's hard to tell. However, we can predict, right? We can predict that cross-border migration would continue at least for the next 10 years. Why? Because the world is increasingly connected and globalized. So, so it's not up to the government to say, no, you can't come. No, we have to control the volume of immigrants coming in or leaving the country. Like the government cannot control. Why? Because people are connected. Like people would find other ways to move. Um, so might as well find policy to help people move or not to move. Help people not to move is to create more job opportunities, right? To to um, to kind of boost the economy. To help people move is to make sure that people move in a safe and more organized way.
Okay, there is one more question. Bu Lilis, yang tantri,
Okay.
untuk jawaban pertanyaannya teman-teman sudah bisa memahami ya? Jawaban pertanyaannya Mbak
Mungkin
Gayutri
dikasih
tadi
ini,
ada dua. Tadi
dikasih
penyebab.
poin-poinnya gitu, Mbak.
Oke, ada dua. Ada yang pertama tadi tentang apa yang biasanya menyebabkan terjadinya migrasi, begitu. Prof. Zhou mengatakan bahwa mostly it is economic force ya, memang faktor ekonomi itu mostly. Tetapi tidak ada single factor, ada multi factors, ada banyak faktor yang membuat orang itu bermigrasi. Salah satunya yang juga tren adalah tentang alam, kondisi alam, disaster, and also apa tadi global apa namanya perubahan iklim dan sebagainya begitu. Jadi yang disebutkan itu. Kemudian tadi yang kedua, kemungkinannya apakah akan meningkat? Ya, Prof. Ju mengatakan tidak ada istilahnya decreasing migrant gitu ya. Jadi selalu akan meningkat. Hanya ada saat beberapa tahun mungkin ada jumlahnya berkurang begitu, tapi tetap meningkat. Tetapi kadang ada masa di mana jumlah peningkatannya tidak terlalu banyak. Begitu saya rasa. Okay, Prof. Zhu, would you please to answer one more question from the students? She asked about what is the difference, what is the main difference between permanent migration and circular migration? What
Good
is the
question.
difference? And also the
Did not,
consequence.
I did not talk about that, but I have it on my concluding slide.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is the question, the free questions perhaps, yeah. My students has been very attracted by your presentation, and she give I guess it's still related question. He asked about that. What is the difference between the permanent migration and circular migration? On the consequence, what is the difference in the consequence between the two types of migration? Okay, would you please to answer this?
Good question. Very good question. And thank you for asking. Now, there are two types of, migration. I mean, two major types. One is permanent migration. Permanent migration means migrants who leave their home country to get resettled in another country permanent. Okay, so that's permanent migration. The implication is permanent resettlement, right? So you resettle in a new country. Circular migration means that you go back and forth. You go to a country perhaps to get job and make money and then return home. And then you go again once you spend all your money and go again and make money and come back home. So there are this pattern, but permanent resettlement is more dominant than circular migration. Now, when we are talking about transnational immigrant transnationalism, that's part of the circular migration because immigrants are going back and forth, right? However, as I mentioned in my talk, transnational practices are not very common. It makes common by scholars, but they are actually not very common. Because, you know, only a small proportion of the immigrant population are going back and forth. The majority of them, they get resettled, they find jobs in their destination state, right? So that's the difference between the two. Now, the consequences the impact on development is profound. For permanent residents, for permanent migration, the impact is negative on hometown development. Why? Because people leave the hometown, especially the more ambitious people, right? The more educated, the more ambitious they leave. So the hometown becomes depopulated. So that's not good for development, right? When you are losing population. In contrast, if it's circular migration, the impact for hometown development is positive because they don't lose population. And also there are capital and money circulating for development. So it's good for development. Unfortunately, circular migration is only a small proportion of the larger international migration trend.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Okay, nice, very good, and it's very clearly answered. Teman-teman, saya rasa sudah bisa menangkap Prof. Zhou try to deliver the materials in your speed di dalam kecepatannya mahasiswa-mahasiswa Indonesia gitu. Saya rasa teman-teman sudah bisa memahami semuanya. Tadi dari pertanyaannya yang terakhir, very very good question. Begitu, tadi ada perbedaan sudah disampaikan, terus kemudian dampaknya terhadap pembangunan juga sudah disampaikan. Kalau yang permanent migration itu dampaknya negatif untuk negara asal, ya kan? Tetapi kalau yang circular itu dampaknya positif untuk negara asal. Sayangnya yang permanent migration itu yang lebih banyak. Yang circular itu lebih sedikit, hanya berapa persen tadi beliau sebutkan. Gitu. Nice, very good. Thank you, Prof. Zhu.
Thank you.
For student, any other question for Prof. Zhu? Okay. Maybe to what the main idea about migration? Maybe you can share to us, Prof. Zhu, as a closing statement to our lecture this session. So maybe it will give a brief knowledge for our student to know more about migration in the global world.
Yeah, well, thank you. It's you ask good questions, and I'm very pleased to have an engaging audience. So migration studies, even though in sociology or in social science, is a smaller field, but now it becomes, there are more and more interests in migration studies. So when we study migration, bear in mind that we also engage with those questions, and we are basically try to understand, I should say three sets of questions. One is why people move. Second, once they move, how well they adapt to their host country. And third is for international migrants, how they impact both the receiving society and the hometown society, right? So one is you're talking about the causes of movement. Second is you're talking about integration, adaptation, assimilation. And third, you're talking about impact, right? Impact, not just on the receiving country, but also on hometown, on sending country. So, but if you're launching a research project on migration studies, you might not be able to answer all the questions, right? So you could choose to examine one question from different aspects. For example, I am asked to give a lecture on immigrant entrepreneurship, right? And then, when you study immigrant entrepreneurship, how does it fit into the larger migration studies into the question that I just mentioned. It could have implication on all three of them, right? Especially on the second, because immigrants could be utilizing entrepreneurship or open up your own business as a way of adapting to the host society, right? So once you make money, you may also consider being transnational, capturing opportunities back home and become transnational, right? So you could also look at it from that perspective. So there are, in other words, as migration scholars, we would have a job for a long time.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Maybe it's remind me something about maybe about 5 or 10 years ago when one of our student has written about their thesis about how ex-migrant worker live and going back to Indonesia and have participate to develop their hometown. They open the new some kind of enterprises in their hometown, and maybe one of that I can underline that how the impact about migrant worker give impact for the country. I think this three things that Prof. Zhou explained very, very deep to how to make a brief summary about our lecture today. Jadi tiga hal yang penting tadi adalah tentang kalau kita mau belajar tentang migrasi, yang pertama adalah mengapa mereka berpindah, why they move. Yang kedua adalah how to adapt, bagaimana mereka beradaptasi dengan situasi di sana. Kemudian yang ketiga, how they have impact to the hometown society, bagaimana mereka setelah bekerja di luar negeri itu bisa membawa dampak untuk negara-negara asalnya. Saya rasa teman-teman juga di sini mungkin ini sebenarnya bukan materi yang asing. Prof. Zhou, maybe as you know that Indonesia is one of the biggest country who send migrant worker as a domestic worker. Unfortunately, maybe the second or the third largest sender migrant worker abroad after Filipina. So what you have shared to us, it's part of our daily life, because many students here from rural area when the migrant worker is come from. So maybe one of their neighbor in their village could become a migrant worker. So this is very related to our daily life in Indonesia. So thank you so much, Prof. Zhou, for your interesting explanation, interesting example, and how you describe about how live in America as the melting pot society in the world. Thank you, Prof. Zhou.
Thank you.
Saya kembalikan ke Raffi untuk bisa ditutup pada pertemuan hari ini. Silakan, Raffi.
Baik, terima kasih Bu Lilis. Okay, we have arrived at the end of the event, the third lecture series SAF Batch 3 today. I'm Raffi as the host. Please apologize for my mistakes and see you in the next lecture series. Thank you. Bye-bye. Wassalamualaikum
Thank you, Raffi.
warahmatullahi
Thank you. Thank you,
wabarakatuh.
professors.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Prof.
Thank you. Thank you
Okay,
all.
thank
And
you.
good
Thank
morning. Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
Okay.
See you next time.
See you next time.
Bye.
Thank you. Take care. Oke, teman-teman mahasiswa, apakah link yang di chat tadi sudah bisa diakses semua yang dikirim oleh Bu Atika?
Sudah,
Sudah
Ibu.
bisa, Ibu.
Oke.
Sudah, Bu.
Ya, oke. Kita masih punya beberapa kali lagi pertemuan. Saya harap teman-teman mahasiswa lebih bisa engage, lebih bisa terlibat dalam diskusi. Kalaupun memang narasumber kita dari luar negeri ya karena program kita inti untuk mengenalkan teman-teman mahasiswa dengan iklim perkuliahan di luar negeri, mengenalkan dengan mungkin juga keberanian teman-teman menyampaikan gagasan dalam bahasa asing. Tapi saya rasa itu bukan hal yang membatasi teman-teman mahasiswa untuk bisa lebih banyak terlibat dalam diskusi karena teman-teman mahasiswa bisa kok menyampaikan dalam bahasa Indonesia lalu bisa ditranslate di Google Translate itu kan hal-hal yang ini ya sangat mungkin dilakukan jadi silahkan nanti keterlibatannya jauh lebih banyak dan tidak usah malu-malu. Oke, recordingnya bisa di stop dulu Yusriza.
Baik, Ibu.
Baik, untuk teman-teman mahasiswa, kita masih punya beberapa sesi online dan offline. Untuk sesi online terutama, kalau offline kita bisa kondisikan secara secara mudah karena teknisnya kita bertemu begitu. Untuk sesi online, saya harap mahasiswa semua, karena saya berprasangka baik bahwa semuanya tidak ada masalah dengan sinyal. Selama tidak ada perkuliahan lain yang harus ditinggalkan, silahkan buka kameranya. Ya, karena itu adalah bagian dari etika perkuliahan. Seperti ini kalau saya bicara, sementara saya tidak tahu di balik layar itu apa yang Anda lakukan, itu uh, terasa tidak membangun iklim komunikasi yang baik begitu. Ya, mau dimanapun Anda berada, mau di kelas, mau di rumah, mau di kampus. Kalau memang kesulitan dengan sinyal, silakan datang ke kampus, bisa dijangkau untuk sinyalnya dan lain sebagainya. Ya, jadi, sorry, ini YouTube-nya masih jalan nggak ya, Iza?
Sepertinya masih jalan, Bu.
Saya bisa on-nya, off-nya di mana ya?
Nah, dari
Ketika.
Bu Atika, ya.
Oke. Baik, next time supaya lebih ini lagi ya, supaya lebih bisa berpartisipasi lagi. Oke, kalau semuanya sudah mengakses untuk presensinya, saya rasa kita bisa akhiri. Wait, saya akan ke mejanya Bu Atika. Ya, saya ada.